Comment below. Collective fear also constructs realities. I want to know if you also feel that sometimes what they call a rumor is just a more acceptable way of facing an unbearable truth. Now, I want to dive even deeper into this subject, because no matter how unsettling the accounts are, it is in the absence of official answers that fear strengthens. When investigating what is truly known about Cell 17, what we find is not exactly a collection of information, but an accumulation of gaps. Records that should be accessible simply do not exist. Incomplete notes, torn pages, omitted names. It's as if someone has worked harder to erase than to document, and that alone speaks volumes. Because when an institution prefers emptiness to explanation, it signals that something there was never meant to be understood, only forgotten. Cell 17 appears in few documents, but when it does, it's always marked with bureaucratic annotations that say little and hide much. Generic terms like operational restriction, preventive interdiction, discontinued occupation. Nothing concrete, no technical reasons, no plausible justifications, just layers and layers of euphemisms. At this point, what is left unsaid is often more frightening than what is confirmed, because omission in institutional settings is almost never naive. It is constructed with intention. It protects or hides or both. During an internal investigation attempted by a group of veteran staff, a complete maintenance history of that wing was requested. The request was denied, without explanation. Just denied. And when they tried to consult records from before the 90s, they were told that these files were damaged and are no longer available. No digitization, no copies, no trace, and this was not an isolated incident. Other professionals, in different years, reported the same type of blockage. Documents that are not in the system, reports that were incorrectly filed, records that went missing. Ambiguity becomes almost a character within this story. It moves between the papers, crosses the accounts, lingers in the hallways, and the most curious thing is that even among the oldest employees, the memories of Cell 17 are vague. There is always a forgotten detail, a swapped name, a sequence of events that no one can reconstruct clearly. It's as if the prison structure itself has learned to delete what it cannot control. And in this scenario, the mystery strengthens not by the amount of information, but by its absence. Some say that the cell was deactivated for administrative reasons. Others claim that there was never anything different there. But then why even now, after so much time, is it still locked? Why hasn't any new inmate been allocated? Why are new employees instructed to ignore its existence? If there's nothing wrong, why so much effort to keep everything so carefully forgotten? It is these unanswered questions that make Cell 17 even more alive, because the true impact of a secret lies not in being revealed, but in everything done to ensure it never comes to light. Comment below. What they erase sometimes screams louder. I want to see who else notices that when everyone avoids looking in the same direction, perhaps that is exactly where the truth lies. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because after everything that has been revealed or hidden, there is only one inevitable question left. Why is Cell 17 still locked? Not just empty, not just inactive, but locked, with a reinforced padlock, no circulation, and no attempts at reintegration for common use. This is not common in an institution that needs to optimize space, where every square meter is costly, where every cell is missed. And yet, it remains there, untouched, as if it holds something that not even time could erase. Some say that keeping that door closed is just an administrative decision, but there is no clear record of this decision. There are no technical explanations, nor available memoranda. It's a silence that perpetuates through generations, as if no one wants to take the responsibility of opening that door. And what's most unsettling is not what Cell 17 was in the past. It is what it still represents today. Because an empty cell locked for so many years transforms, it becomes a symbol, a reminder of what was not said, of the choices that were made, of the stories that preferred to be forgotten. It's as if the space absorbed everything that was lived there, as if the pain, fear, and guilt became embedded in the walls, in the corners, in the air. Those who pass nearby say they can Feel it. They don't see it, they don't hear it, but they feel it. A presence that has no shape, but carries weight. A sensation that paralyzes and forces one to quicken their pace, even when nothing moves. The cell has become a blind spot on the map. And you know what they say about blind spots, that they harbor the greatest dangers. Because what isn't clearly seen has the power to become anything the mind desires, or fears. And when the collective mind projects fear, the legend solidifies. But what if it's not just a legend? What if what keeps that door locked is not superstition, nor forgetfulness, nor bureaucracy, but a silent pact? An unspoken decision made by all who, one day, got too close and realized there was something inside that was impossible to explain. Something that isn't recorded on paper, that isn't spoken aloud but is respected, by instinct, for survival. Because some truths do not liberate, they consume, and then everything returns to square one. Is it a muffled truth, a collective, superstition, or something even darker? No one enters, no one leaves, and the cell remains there, steadfast in the same place, as if waiting. But waiting for what? Or whom? Sometimes, what remains trapped is not just part of the story. It is a presence, an energy that never left. And if no one enters, and no one leaves, perhaps what is trapped inside is not just human. Write in the comments. There's something in there that doesn't sleep. I want to see who else has felt that the silence of that cell speaks too loudly to be ignored. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this story has moved you as well. And that's why I want to invite you, very simply, to continue this journey with me. If this kind of content makes you think, intrigues you, or even makes you question what else might be hidden out there, subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't just talk about cases, we dive into the deeper layers of what many prefer not to see. Also, leave a comment saying, "I went all the way with you." That way I'll know who really stayed until the end, who felt that connection, and who is willing to go deeper in the upcoming episodes. And if at any moment you found yourself reflecting, shivering, or even silent, leave a like, because sometimes that small gesture is also a way of saying, "This touched me." And if you're still left with that taste of, "I need to understand," or there's a video over here that complements this topic, click and continue with me there, because some things only start to make sense when we connect the right dots. But when this suggestion starts to repeat itself with different people, different contexts, and different periods of history, the inevitable question arises. What if it's not just suggestion? What if what happened inside has left marks that no one wants or is able to translate into words? Write in the comments, "This cell has a memory." I want to know who else feels that this kind of place holds much more than the walls let on. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding the real weight of Cell 17 involves hearing the stories that have tried to be buried along with time. One of them speaks of a man named Elias, sentenced for a minor crime but transferred to this unit after an unexpected outbreak of aggression. According to records, Elias arrived calm, cooperative, and remained so for the first few weeks. But everything changed after he was temporarily placed in Cell 17 due to an emergency renovation in another sector. The change lasted exactly 3 days. On the 4th day, he was found huddled in the corner of the wall, mumbling numbers as if he were counting something that never seemed to end. His eyes were open but empty, and from that moment on, he never spoke another word. The medical team classified the case as a sudden psychotic collapse. No additional explanations were recorded. The only constant observation in the medical record was his insistence on writing the number 17 repeatedly on any available surface. This became a disturbing pattern. Inmates who passed through there exhibited similar behaviors: sudden anxiety, attacks, loss of sense of time, a feeling of being watched at all times. And even without contact with each other, they echoed identical phrases. "There's more than one in there," as if the cell held something that couldn't be seen but was felt overwhelmingly. Another case involved a veteran prison officer known for being skeptical, methodical, and averse to superstitions. He was assigned to cover night shifts right in the sector where Cell 17 was located. For weeks, Everything went on normally until he started reporting noises during his rounds, whispers that seemed to come from inside the locked cell, even when it was empty. One night the sound was so clear that he decided to check personally. What he saw was never officially reported. He only wrote a note, handed it to the prison director, and requested immediate leave. The note read, "It's not empty, it never was, no one wanted to be transferred there, and those who didn't always return the same." This became an internal code, a kind of silent warning. New arrivals were alerted with glances, never with words, and the cell started to be avoided as if it were contaminated by something invisible that transformed the minds of those who entered. It was as if there was a type of energy accumulated inside, an invisible charge of pain, guilt, or despair that lodged itself in the walls and began to spread to anyone who dared to linger. Too long. Cases like this don't appear in public reports, but behind the scenes of prison routine, these stories circulate as absolute truths. They are fragments of a narrative built on fear, but which gained strength through repetition, coherence, and emotional impact. And when something like this spans generations within such a rigid structure as the prison system, we understand that perhaps we are not just dealing with myths, but with signs. Signs that point to a hidden truth that no one wants to confront directly. Write in the comments, "There's something there that no one can erase." I want to see who else feels that these stories, even though absurd, carry more reality than we would like to admit. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because there is something more frightening than the accounts themselves. The silence surrounding them. Not the natural, occasional silence, but a dense, intentional, almost rehearsed silence. When everyone avoids commenting on the same subject, when eyes drop at the mention of Cell 17's name, when even the longest-serving inmates change the subject without explanation, that's when the absence of words becomes the loudest scream. And the most unsettling part is that no one needs to agree on this silence. It happens as a reflection, as part of a collective mentality that forms in environments where fear dictates the rules. Within the prison, speaking too much can be costly, not just among inmates, but also among the officers themselves. There exists an underground culture built on protection, codes, quick and often brutal decisions. It's the so-called omerta, the code of silence. And it's not present only among criminals. It's rooted in the power structure, in the behind-the-scenes of routine and interrupted conversations. When someone decides to break this rule, even unconsciously, they become a point of attention, and no one wants to be that point. Because in this type of environment, the greatest danger is not what is seen, but what is perceived too late. It is in this void of answers that the mystery gains strength. Because the human mind tends to fill empty spaces with assumptions. And when these assumptions repeat among different people, with similar stories and emotional impacts, you begin to realize that perhaps it's not just imagination. Perhaps what is being silenced is not a lie, but a hidden truth that everyone knows but prefers not to name. And this is powerful, because what is not said has even more room to grow, distort, and dominate. Is fear greater than the truth itself? The absence of official records, the lack of open testimonies, the disappearance of documents, and the contained behavior of those who pass through Cell 17 all point in the same direction. There is something that no one wants to touch. And we're not just talking about avoiding controversies, we're talking about emotional survival, conscious choices not to lose control, because facing a disturbing reality head-on requires more than courage. It demands a rupture with what has been learned, with what has been accepted, and within a system built to keep everything under control, the last thing one desires is a truth that cannot be managed. Perhaps that's why Cell 17 remains locked, not because of what is inside it, but because of everything it represents outside it. It has become a symbol of what is easier not to understand, a fixed point in a system that does not want to destabilize. And those who dare to approach, those who try to bring to light what has been buried, carry with them a risk of discovering that true terror does not always come from within the cells, but from the collective effort to keep certain secrets alive. Comment, silence speaks too. I want to see who here feels that same discomfort when they realize that what is not said says a lot. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because to truly understand what keeps Cell 17 alive in the memory of so many, one must look beyond the accounts and dive into the workings of the human mind when exposed to constant fear. Inside a prison, where every sound, every glance, every gesture can represent a threat, the brain goes into survival mode. Everything is alert, everything is a signal. And it is precisely in this scenario of extreme tension that rumors gain power, not because they are confirmed, but because they fill a gap the brain needs to resolve to protect itself. This phenomenon has a name in psychology: emotional contagion. In closed environments with high pressure, it takes just one person to strongly believe in something, like the danger of Cell 17, for that feeling to spread. Fear becomes collective, and when multiple individuals start to react in the same way to a stimulus, however subtle it may be, the mind transforms that into absolute truth. It's an internal, unconscious decision, but deeply powerful. After all, if everyone is avoiding the same thing, there must be a reason. And if no one talks about what they saw, it's because what was seen surpasses the limits of what can be shared. Over time, these stories gain details. Small distortions turn into facts, pauses in sentences, averted gazes, whispers when passing by the corridor where the cell is located. All of this reinforces the narrative. And even those who have never seen anything start to feel as if they have. The experience becomes collective. And here enters another essential factor. The brain prefers to believe in something frightening and have an explanation than to live in the complete void of doubt. That's when legends arise. They don't only emerge from mystery, but from the human need to understand and make sense of environments where logic cannot cope with reality. This kind of mental construction is not exclusive to prisons. It appears in schools, hospitals, barracks, convents, places where groups live under rigid rules and deal with intense emotions. But inside the prison, where freedom has been suspended and violence lurks even in the most mundane details, the creation of myths is not just a curiosity. It's a defense mechanism, a way to transform what is invisible into something that can be identified, named, feared, and, in a way, controlled. Because when you give a name to fear, it ceases to be a faceless monster. But then the question lingers: when fear is real, is the legend still just a story? Or does the myth arise precisely because the truth would be even harder to accept? Cell 17 may well be a symbol created by desperate minds, but it could also be a true portrait of the psychological impact certain places carry. Because there are spaces where pain accumulates in such an intense, profound way that it seems to gain a life of its own. Some doors should never be opened, and Cell 17 is one of them. In the heart of a prison forgotten by time, there lies a deadly secret, a mystery so profound that not even the most experienced guards dare to speak of it. Cell 17 remains locked, to this day, as if it hides something that the world simply should not know. But after all, are we merely facing an urban legend created by collective fear, or is there a dark truth that is being deliberately suppressed? Have you ever wondered how far the power of a secret goes? What you are about to discover may surprise you, because sometimes silence is not just an echo of the past, it's a warning, a desperate plea for certain doors to remain sealed. In Cell 17, the deadly secret is not just a rumor, it's a constant whisper in the empty hallways, an invisible weight that haunts all who dare to come near. Stay with me until the end, because understanding the story behind this cell is more than just uncovering a mystery. It's exploring the depths of the human mind, where fear transforms into imprisonment, and where the truth is often so unbearable that it needs to be buried alive. Testimonies contradict, files disappear, and those few who dared to investigate faced consequences that no one can fully explain. Have you ever experienced this? That shiver when hearing a story that seems too made up to be real, yet carries such a dense, palpable atmosphere that your instinct screams for you not to ignore it. Cell 17 awakens exactly this kind of reaction. There's a reason it is sealed. There's a reason no one wants to speak about it. And there's an even greater reason for this deadly secret to remain buried in oblivion. But why the silence? Why such resistance to revealing what actually happened? Is it fear, protection, or are we facing something much bigger? Something that transcends the cold walls of the prison and touches the darkest essence of criminal psychology. Understanding what keeps Cell 17 closed may reveal not just a horror story, but also a disturbing portrait of how the human being deals with the unknown, with guilt, and with secrets that should never be exposed. What started as a simple curiosity quickly transformed into an investigation marked by disappearances, disjointed accounts, and a succession of events that feel like they came straight out of a nightmare. A cell, a number, a silence. It seems like little, but it's enough to build an insurmountable barrier of fear and superstition. Cell 17 is still there, untouched, defying any logic or easy explanation. And in this video, we will cross that forbidden line. We will get close to this deadly secret that has insisted on remaining hidden for so long. So get ready, because what you are about to discover may change how you perceive silence, fear, and the truth itself. And if this topic resonates with you, if at any moment this story stirred something within you, whether it was curiosity, unease, or even that sensation of déjà vu, leave a comment here about what touched you the most. Sometimes a simple phrase from you can ignite an important discussion or help someone see what they hadn't noticed yet. This space here isn't just mine, it's ours, and your opinion matters. Also, take a moment to like the video if it's making you think differently. It's a small gesture, but it greatly strengthens the work behind each investigation, each script, each piece of research I bring here. Every like helps this content reach more people who, like you, are interested in uncovering what many prefer to keep hidden. And if this is the kind of narrative you want to keep following, with real stories, dark details, and deep reflections on what lies behind human behavior, subscribe to the channel now. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. Together, we can keep the mission alive to give voice to what has been silenced for so long. Because when we gather to talk about topics that almost no one wants to touch, something powerful happens. We create a community where fear turns into strength and the unknown into knowledge. And Cell 17, he still has so much more to reveal. Now I want to dive even deeper into this subject. Because what transforms an ordinary cell into a symbol of collective fear isn't the wood of the door or the number on the wall. It's the energy that starts to circulate when something strange happens, and no one can explain. The story of Cell 17 didn't begin with headlines or official records. It emerged in the background, in whispered conversations among inmates, in exchanged glances in the hallways, in uncomfortable pauses during night rounds. The first mention came as a loose phrase, said with hesitation, "Something's wrong in there." That was it. An almost banal comment, but one that carried a weight hard to ignore. And like all legends that arise in high-tension environments, it only took a spark for the fear to spread. Inmates who refused transfers, guards who avoided full rounds in the block. No one said outright what was happening, but everyone knew. There was something different. And this collective silence, this unconscious decision not to speak openly, is what stands out the most. Because when a place carries a hidden truth, the environment itself starts to speak for itself. Have you heard stories like this and thought they were just rumors? That type of account that seems too exaggerated to be real, yet leaves a strange feeling in the air, as if part of it were true or worse, as if everything were real, but told in the only bearable way, as fiction. Cell 17 became that. A blind spot, a symbol of something that no one wanted to confront, but that everyone felt. And that's where the true impact of these stories lies. They reveal more about our mentality than about the facts themselves. Inside a prison, where every decision can be a matter of survival, the mind clings to signs. An out-of-time noise, a poorly explained shadow, a cell where the light constantly flickers. These are small details, but when added to the history of the place, they shape narratives that grow, strengthen, and become silent codes of warning. Cell 17, then, is not just a cell. It's a reflection of something deeper, the desperate attempt to understand what is inexplicable, to give form to a fear that never had a name, but that has always been there. And the most curious thing is that these legends, far from being just horror stories, reveal a human need for control, to have an explanation, even if fantastical, for that which eludes logic. It is at this point that Cell 17 becomes part of a psychological journey, a collective way of dealing with traumas, omissions, and truths distorted by time. Each rumor carried an intention: to alert, to protect, to divert. And when you start to piece together these fragments, you realize that what seemed like exaggeration might just be the rawest way of expressing a real pain. Comment below. There's something there that nobody wants to see. Let's see who else feels this heavy atmosphere just imagining what's locked behind that door. Now I want to delve even deeper into this issue, because understanding what surrounds Cell 17 requires diving into the very scenario where it all began. The prison where this story takes shape was built over 70 years ago, at a time when human rights were barely a distant idea, and control over inmates' behavior was based on fear, repression, and extreme isolation. The heavy architecture, the narrow hallways, the constant chill of the thick walls, everything there seems designed to break the mind, not just the body. Over the decades, the penitentiary gained notoriety among the inmates themselves. It was known not just for being harsh, but for harboring stories that circulated as unspoken truths. It was the kind of place where one learned quickly not to ask questions. Among cells numbered in a trivial way, one in particular began to stand. Out number 17. It was neither the largest, nor the dampest, nor the most isolated. But something about it was unsettling. Something that even the guard, who had seen it all, could not quite explain. Awkward glances, orders to avoid certain wings, rumors of incomplete rounds, and even documents that simply vanished over time. In the old records, there are incomplete notes, crossouts, and conflicting dates involving this cell. What stands out is that the incidents described never appear in detail. Just loose words like emergency transfer, altered behavior, or permanent inaptitude. Phrases that say a lot and at the same time explain nothing. And it's there that the hidden truth begins to form. When official accounts shy away from explaining, oral testimonies gain strength. The stories passed in whispers become the only possible sources. And the most curious thing is that, even as they change over time, they all maintain a common point. Something in Cell 17 was not right. Some say a specific inmate stayed too long, inside and came out at different. Others claim that no one remained there for more than 3 nights without asking to be moved. There are even those who speak of sounds that didn't come from the hallways, sounds from within. Banging, laughter, voices overlapping, as if several people were trapped in that same space. None of this is recorded in the reports, but the pattern of avoidance, the requests to change cells, and the fact that it was officially sealed years later reinforce that there was something out of the ordinary. And that something was not just discomfort. It was panic. And it's exactly this type of environment that reveals how much our perception can be shaped by suggestion.